It's Snow A Go-Go and another name for ski party. And the craziest things happen in the snow. Frankie, Avalon, and Deborah, Walley, they're cool. And Dwayne, Hickman, and Yvonne, Craig, warm at 20 below. They'll all have a snowball in ski party. See Ski Party, American International.
We're not talking about actors. We mean a real monster.
I brought her back. She'll live and I'll get her another body.
I know they're going to catch me, but don't let anyone see me like that. Please, Doctor, help me.
Biologically speaking, it's of primary importance that man should want to mate. Hey, that hurts!
You don't get all your kicks from surfing, do you?
We want to be free to ride our machines without being hassled by the man. And we want to get loaded.
You think you're going to make a slave of the world? I'll see you in hell first.
The American International Podcast.
Are you ready?
Hello and welcome. It's the American International Podcast. I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
And today we're hitting the slopes for Ski Party from 1965.
Ski Party was directed by Alan Rafkin from a screenplay by Robert Kaufman and produced by Gene Corman for American International Pictures.
Ski Party stars Frankie Avalon as Todd Armstrong, Dwayne Hickman as Craig Gamble, Deborah Walley as Linda Hughes, Yvonne Craig as Barbara Norris, Robert Q. Lewis as Mr. Pevney, Bobbi Shaw as Nita Elksberg, Aron Kincaid as Freddie Carter, the Hondells as themselves.
Also appearing are Stephen Rogers as Jean, Patty Chandler as Janet, Michael Nader as Bobby, Sally Saxey as Indian, John Boyer as John, Mickey Jameson as Mickey, Mickey Dora as Mickey, Mary Hughes as Mary, Bill Sampson as Arthur, Lurie Holmes as Lurie, Lesley Gore as herself, and James Brown and the Famous Flames as themselves.
Nice. The Ski Party opens, and we see a race downhill on skis. We get the American International logo, and then the Hondells sing Ski Party over skiing stock footage, I imagine. The credits are in Comic Sans, which is an indication to me to not take this movie too seriously.
There is a line in the song Ski Party that did catch my ear. It goes, "Get some alcohol and put it under my hood."
That sounds dangerous. That's how you get car fires. I thought the night skiing footage looked cool. It went from day to night. And not that I'm a skier, but if I was, I might like skiing at night with the colored lights.
Yeah, they were holding lanterns or something, and the glow looked kind of cool against the snow.
In the twilight.
After the credits, we find ourselves in a college classroom. The class is Fun Without Sex with Professor Sonia Roberts.
And guess who plays Professor Sonia Roberts?
I don't have to guess. I saw the movie. It's an uncredited Annette Funicello. In the class, there are a couple of students who look like Frankie Avalon and Dwayne Hickman, but they're actually Todd Armstrong and Craig Gamble.
Which is which in this movie?
Frankie Avalon is Todd Armstrong in this case, and Dwayne Hickman is Craig Gamble.
I had to write it down because we did another movie where that was reversed.
Yeah, it was Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine, where Frankie and Dwayne played characters of the opposite names.
The same names, but they switched actors. And those aren't related at all. These movies are not connected in any other way. The subject is the disparate sexual peaks of men and women, although Professor Sonia Roberts calls them romantic peaks.
Professor Roberts teaches that the female doesn't reach her romantic peak until her 35th year, whereas the male reaches their most romantic between the ages of 17 and 19, which presents certain social problems for the college male.
Yes, and we all know that by romantic, she means sexual.
This presents certain social problems, such as extreme anxiety, frustration, and tension.
Horniness. After the class ends, Todd and Craig walk out of the building and decide that they need an older woman, someone who's AARP age, but one that looks good, hopefully. And then they see a classmate who has no problem with romantic peaks.
This is Freddie Carter, and he's got a whole gaggle of girls around him. Freddie asks which one of those girls will be lucky enough to buy him dinner tonight.
What's the one who wins the race to the locker room?
Todd and Craig discuss with each other whether Freddie might share his secret with them. Probably not, they decide. Craig thinks they should ask him anyway. It will give him a reason to sock him. That's what John Wayne would do. Now Craig and Todd are in suits. Craig says that he and John Wayne use the same razor for shaving, number 5, and they see Freddie with his gaggle of girls once again. Now they're dressed for track.
Todd and Craig just don't get what Freddie has and they don't. They're athletes, so they say, and Freddie's an athlete, so why aren't they pulling girls the same way?
Todd realizes they've been playing in front of the girls while Freddie is playing with them.
But enough bad news. Todd tells Craig he's scored them both a second date with Barbara and Linda. Craig's ready to go tonight, but the date's actually 2 weeks from next Thursday.
So now it must be 2 weeks from next Thursday because it's date night. Linda and Barbara are giggling in the back seat of the car. They're at a drive-in movie, while Todd and Craig are seated up front. I think I figured out at least part of their problem.
They don't know how dates work. And they're watching some Italian film. Apparently there's some sort of love scene, not that we get to see it, that makes the girls giggle. After the film, the four of them decide to go parking, although if they don't switch seats, I don't know how this is going to work. Todd's parking spot is blocked by another car. He goes up to the passenger window of that car to ask the driver to move, and lo and behold, the driver is making out with Professor Sonia Roberts. She's dating a student.
Well, they're both at their sexual peaks.
She knows from whence she speaks.
Once parked, Todd and Craig leave the car to decide who gets to stay with the car and who gets to go for a walk with his date.
I'm surprised they don't go with each other.
Todd says the last time he and Linda took a walk and Craig and Barbara had the car. Craig's not sure that's how he remembers it, but Todd tells him that that was when Craig tried to kiss Barbara and she burnt his nose with her cigarette, which refreshes his memory.
Well, it would, wouldn't it?
So Todd asks Craig to meet him back here in 20 minutes. They negotiate and agree on 12 instead. They take an obscenely long time to synchronize their watches.
And then they decide, what the heck? They're only a few seconds off. So Todd gets the car. And then we get a montage of him attacking Linda, set to silent movie music. I don't know how to describe it any better than that.
The windshield wipers are going. The top is going up and down. Things slow down when Todd tries to go in for a kiss, and Linda just kind of laughs at him and says, "You're kidding." Todd doesn't understand. He's a nice, clean-cut American boy with a C+ average. But he realizes the problem is he's just not like Freddie.
Linda doesn't feel for Todd what she does for Freddie. She's gaga over him like all the other girls are. And she can't really explain why, just that Todd doesn't have it. Whatever it is.
Now we're with Todd and Craig in their dorm room, I suppose. Craig is doing push-ups and Todd is doing squats as they discuss how they failed to get anywhere with the girls that night. Not only did they not get a kiss goodnight, they didn't even get to walk them to the front door.
Yep, they're losers.
If he can be believed, Craig is at 2,194 push-ups and counting.
Maybe that's the frustration going. Out the window, they hear Freddie driving up with his date, trying to drop her off. But she won't go.
Todd yells out the window, "Leave her alone, you dirty young man, you."
I think he's yelling at the wrong person.
Freddie's trying to get Janet, the girl who's all over him, to go in, but she says she just wants another 5 minutes with him. He tells her they're going on a ski week and they'll have plenty of time for this then. "Oh, sure," says Janet, along with Indian and Linda Hughes and Barbara Norris and all the rest of them. But Freddie is president of the ski club and it's his duty to go on this trip.
Todd and Craig overhear this, and Craig thinks after a week with Freddie, they'll never see Linda or Barbara again. But Todd wants to go on the trip. He tells Craig to start packing some warm clothes. Now's their chance to do a girl-boy sport. Craig comes around and agrees, but there's one problem. Neither one of them can ski.
But that's something they'll worry about once they get there. Now the bus is leaving for the ski trip, and I guess Lesley Gore snuck on board to sing Sunshine, Lollipops, and Rainbows.
She's the onboard entertainment.
And she makes the kids sing along with her, too. When she finishes the song, she takes a seat, never to be seen again.
No, it's a little weird, but it's not the weirdest cameo this movie has to offer. At the resort, the gang disembark from the bus and meet the neurotic hotel clerk, Mr. Pevney. He takes them inside the lodge and shows them the infirmary, where 3 doctors set an average of 9 broken bones a day. And there's loud, pained screams coming from inside.
He tells the group that he's received letters from all of the boys' fathers saying that the chaperones won't be necessary. The boys are delighted to hear this, but unfortunately the girls' parents didn't send any such letters. So they will be on the honor system.
And it doesn't mean what Todd thinks it means. Pevney is going to divide the girls and boys into separate rooms, which I assume they would do anyways, but I guess they're on different sides of the lodge. As he's trying to give room assignments, he fumbles his clipboard, and everything falls to the ground. The students try to help him pick everything up, and Todd and Craig find a tape sent by Pevney to his psychiatrist. And Todd gets an idea he calls Operation Screwball.
Operation Screwball starts right away as Craig starts asking questions to try and confuse Mr. Pevney. He turns to Pevney and asks if he's sure he's received a letter from his father because his father doesn't know how to write.
It was weird stuff about his dad being married in the 2nd grade and dropped out of school, and they couldn't figure out how old he was, either 18 or 23.
It was all pretty pointless.
And Pevney just basically gets frustrated and tells them all to go to their rooms. And as they are, an attractive woman named Nita strolls by in her swimsuit and all the guys get excited. They're going to go for a swim too. The girls, feeling rebuffed, realize they have bikinis too, except for Indian. And Janet offers Indian her shoelaces because, as she says, this is war.
So the kids are now gathered at the pool, dancing while Todd sings lots more.
And the kids kind of awkwardly gyrate, in a way I guess you could call dancing. They're not that good.
Two of the guys are talking with Nita.
One of them's Bobbi, who's played by Michael Nader, who I love seeing in this because I was a big fan of him in All My Children, where he played Dimitri. Just a little side note for anyone who ever watched soap operas.
They're very appreciative of Nita because not only is she attractive, she always says ja and never says no.
It's not in the Swedish vocabulary.
She's from Stockholm. Then Pevney comes in to announce the ski lesson schedule.
Advanced ski instruction begins in 52 minutes, and it's for the fellas only, so they can brush up for the big event. The women get to go to a beginner class only, and that's pretty sexist. Some of the women could be better than the men, and as we'll find out, some of the men can't even ski.
So then we see that the group is taking a ski lift up the mountain. First, Freddie is with a girl, and she's all over him. Following them are Linda and Barbara in the next chair, wondering when they might get their turn with Freddie.
And then we see Todd and Craig. They're clinging to each other in abject terror. And behind them, there's one guy who remarks, more or less to the camera, on their unusual closeness.
Now we're at the top of the mountain, and Craig and Todd seem ready to ski.
Well, I wouldn't say Craig does. I think he's trying to back out because he's breakable.
He admits he's a coward and refuses to go down. And just then a yodeling polar bear skis past.
This is so absurd, but it's also one of my favorite parts of this movie. No explanation ever given.
I think it does cause Todd to do a double take, but he just goes with it.
It's just something that's going to happen again and again in this movie for no reason whatsoever.
Then Craig and Todd join the others for their instruction. The instructor, who has a very German accent, sends a couple of guys down the hill.
They're demonstrating the ski rescue practice. One of them slides under the other with his head between his legs, picks the other guy up on his shoulder, and then they go off. And this spooks Craig and Todd to such a degree that they basically scamper away. And the instructor just yells Achtung at them a lot, but they're gone.
But they are closer to where the girls are having their lesson. They hear the sound of the girls laughing and look in to see how much more fun they're having. That's the way to learn, says Todd. Nice, easy, and slow. A couple of lessons like that, and they would be able to outski Freddie easily.
Yeah, I don't know why they weren't offered lessons by their status, beginner or advanced, instead of their gender. It should be no shame to not know how to ski and take beginner lessons.
But Todd has a great idea. And last time Todd had a great idea, Craig was suspended for 2 semesters.
So you know it's going to be good.
Before he can finish that sentence, however, Todd and Craig are descending the stairs of the ski lodge dressed as women, kind of, wearing sweaters and wigs and headbands.
They also have falsies, makeup, and...
Not a lot of makeup. They pretty much look like Frankie Avalon and Dwayne Hickman with wigs on.
Only the most undiscerning viewer would ever mistake them for anyone else. As they descend the stairway, they get a lot of attention, but it's not all positive. One girl passing them says, "Look at the competition." And another says, "I can't. I just had lunch."
Then Craig and Todd practice their girly voices.
They're high and vaguely British.
I didn't think they were remotely British.
Well, I heard just a touch of it. It's like they're trying to imitate like someone from Monty Python wearing a wig, or Mrs. Doubtfire. Not that they would have seen that at that point. Yeah, I would say Mrs. Doubtfire is a much closer match to how they talk.
It sounds more like they're trying out some British slang maybe, but not the accents.
Yeah, well, a lot of people think they're doing a British accent and they aren't, and this is the case here.
Well, now dressed convincingly as women, they join the girls who are headed out to ski. And because of those amazing accents they're using, they are able to convince them they're British exchange students. And Nita is the girls' instructor.
And we get our second polar bear sighting. The yodeling bear skis down the hill. And we see Nita trying to teach Jane, that's Todd's alias, to ski. And she ends up going down the slopes at top speed. Nora wants to help her, but as Linda points out, she can't ski either. Linda calls Nita for help, but getting none, goes after Jane herself.
I guess Nita decides the best way to learn is by doing, so she gives Craig as Nora a push, and he goes down the hill too.
He doesn't actually look that bad, despite claiming to not know how. I mean, his stunt double doesn't look that bad.
Todd as Jane isn't doing that bad either. He's making a lot of noise, but he's staying upright as he goes down the hill and in between trees.
He's bargaining with God, I guess, that he'll do all these things if he can make it down alive.
Freddie, on the other hand, it seems like an old pro. He's on his skis while reading Casanova, His Private Life.
But he tosses the book over his shoulders because there's no pictures.
Then Craig, as Nora crashes into him. Freddie is immediately smitten with the high-pitched voiced foreigner.
With a 5 o'clock shadow. I think what he likes about her is that she doesn't like him. Immediately, Nora pushes him away, physically and verbally. And this is catnip to Freddie.
Meanwhile, Todd/Jane is still going down the hill until he crashes into a tree.
Yep, and Deborah Walley's stunt double finds him.
Oh, Jane, Linda laughs. To which Jane replies, I must have taken a wrong turn.
So now we're in another scene. Linda and Jane catch Nora on Freddie's back. He got fresh with her and she's got him in a half Nelson. Linda just can't believe that anyone would not want to be with Freddie. But Nora isn't interested.
But Freddie is still interested in Nora. Oh, gee, Linda, can't you see we want to be alone? Nora continues voicing her displeasure in Freddie's attention. Linda tells Nora that all the girls at school want to get with Freddie, so she doesn't understand why Nora is taking issue with him.
Then she hauls Nora off for a talk, leaving Jane alone with Freddie. Freddie asks Jane about British girls, and Jane karate chops him playfully. And then we get a polar bear ice skating cameo. It's our third.
So Linda's telling Nora, who is really Craig, how women in America take care of their men. But first she has Nora swear, so help me Liz Taylor,
that she'll never tell any male person this privileged information.
But when she tells Nora the secret, the film has been muted at the government's request, so it's unknown to the viewing audience what she related.
Yeah, there's a weird message about, in the interest of furthering the population explosion, this information will not be divulged. And I at first didn't understand this, but you explained to me that this is how Linda and other women trick men into getting with them, I guess marrying them. And we don't want the men to find out their little girl secrets.
Exactly.
Because then they'd be on to us. And that's just so corny.
So Nora asks if Linda would share this information with Jane too. She's a woman, isn't she? Nora whistles over to Jane, who is still with Freddie. Freddie tells Jane he hopes they can be friends. If only you meant that. I saw the way you looked at Nora.
Freddie agrees. With Nora, it's different. And he offers Jane a handshake to prove their friendship. And Jane shakes his hand with her kung fu grip. Freddie says, hey, I said I was sorry.
Now we find Craig and Barbara and Todd and Linda riding in a 2-horse open sleigh, singing Painting the Town.
For once, they're sitting boy, girl, boy, girl.
Craig kisses Barbara and they proceed to have a strange conversation.
Barbara says after that kiss, that he's going to have to marry her now.
Craig says he hears bells, but Barbara explains that's just the sleigh bells.
Craig says that he would marry Barbara tomorrow if he could only get a raise. She wonders that he has a job. He's in college. He says, no, in my allowance. And they admit that they kind of like each other.
And they exchange a bunch of really weird one-liners.
Craig says that he really does like her. And Barbara says, we'll see. Craig calls her on this. And she says she saw Barbara Stanwyck say that in a movie once. And she ended up with Cary Grant. Craig informs Barbara that she can be prettier than him, but not funnier. And that's kind of a severe restriction for this character to give.
In the back of the sleigh, Todd tells Linda he'd like her to be his girl. But she tells him he's too anxious.
She doesn't got to do anything.
He asks her what he's doing wrong, but he already knows the answer, everything.
He wants Linda to tell him exactly how to get a girl like her to want him. And Linda says that she'd never tell a guy that, but she would tell another girl. Todd thinks that women are too catty to share their secrets. But Linda says, well, no, just today I started to tell 2 English girls the secret.
So Todd asks if she's going to be telling these 2 English girls more tomorrow. Actually, says Linda, she had planned on inviting them over for cocoa after the sleigh ride. But she doesn't know where they live. Todd offers that if he sees them, he'll tell them to head on over. Oh, good, says Linda. They were really lots of fun. More than Craig and me? Todd asks. Linda assures him that it's in a different way.
In their room, Deborah Walley takes the lead on the song We'll Never Change Them, as the other girls, but not Barbara, sing and dance.
Besides Linda, Janet, Indian, and Lurie are all in the room, as are Jane and Nora.
Yeah, they come in, start bopping along with the music.
Once the song is over and it's safe, Barbara comes in with some cocoa.
And now it's time for girl talk. Barbara describes how she taught that Craig Gamble a lesson when he tried to kiss her.
She gives more detail on that cigarette on the nose story.
Yeah, and it kind of sounds like a hostage situation. He tried to kiss her and she didn't want to, so he locked the car doors and tried to tie her hands behind her with her hair ribbon. Man, in a different movie, this would be the start of a killing spree. Like true crime podcast.
But when he tried to kiss her again, she let him, and this time she had that lit cigarette in her mouth, which causes laughter to erupt amongst all the girls, except for Nora and Jane.
Craig might be seeing things from another perspective for once. But how do you not know somebody's smoking a cigarette when you go in for a kiss?
Then the other girls take turns telling their tales.
And in one of them, Indian says that one boy who got fresh with her will be out of jail in 2 years. I mean, what are these girls going through? I guess we did see some of it. Maybe they should be talking to Freddie. He's the one that could really relate to them.
Eventually, Jane/Todd says it's getting late and they've got to be going. As they're leaving, a couple of pillows are thrown their way. Pillow fight! Shall we? Asks Jane. Do you have to ask? Says Nora. Then we cut to the aftermath of the pillow fight.
Feathers everywhere.
Feathers everywhere, and the girls seem to have lost to the British exchange students.
UK 1, US nothing.
Linda asks them to turn out the lights when they go, but as they're leaving, Mr. Pevney locks them in for the night.
From the outside. Is this not some kind of fire hazard?
Well, he did say that they would be locked in to ensure the honor system that they were going to be put on.
I guess their chastity is more important than their physical health.
Craig asks what they're going to do now. Todd turns to face the camera. Craig, what's the average age of our audience? 15, says Craig.
Out, commands Todd.
Then they sneak out the window, because what they want to do isn't appropriate for a 15-year-old audience.
And now I suppose it's the next day. In the lobby at the front desk, Mr. Pevney is taking a call from a former guest who's missing some items of clothing that she left behind. And you can guess which articles those might be.
Wigs, sweaters, and headbands, I would guess.
Yep. And probably brassieres and false breasts.
Then Todd and Craig, as Jane and Nora, come down the stairs. Craig is complaining that he just wants to learn how to ski so he can ditch the drag and spend some time with Barbara.
Yeah, he's tired of this dime-stored, some-like-it hot routine.
Todd assures him that today is the last day they'll have to do this, as soon as they finish those ski lessons.
They pass Pevney, who's still on the phone. Once they're outside, Todd asks Craig for his brunette wig. Operation Screwball needs it to make Pevney crack into 1,000,000 pieces. Todd puts his own blonde wig under his sweater, and then dons Craig's. He walks over to the desk and makes Pevney notice him with the brunette wig on. And then he disappears up the stairs for a little bit, swaps wigs, and returns so that now Pevney sees him as a blonde. Same face, different hair. And Pevney is befuddled.
He thought he was getting better.
And now we're at the end of the Iditarod, apparently, as Nita is delivered via dog sled to the ski lesson.
Todd and Craig, still dressed as Jane and Nora, speak with her. They're discussing the difference between the three of them, being European girls, and the American girls. Nita tells how they do things in Sweden.
And apparently it involves very little talking and a lot of doing, if you know what I mean.
Jane asks Nita if she has a friend. Nita's a little confused, but Jane explains like she and Nora are friends. And Nita has a friend in town named Helga.
Todd gets an idea from this, and he calls an audible. He's going to go back to the lodge and ditch his wig. He thinks he's figured out that girls only want boys who want other girls. So if he, Todd, gets with Nita, and Craig gets with her friend, Helga, well then Linda and Barbara will be jealous enough to notice and want them back.
But it would look suspicious if they both leave and come back as Todd and Craig, so Todd's going to go first. Craig says okay, but he gets Nita. Todd says no, Craig gets Helga. But what if she's a dog? Todd raises the pitch of his voice and calls out, Nita, tell us about your friend. Nita replies that she's got a great personality.
She's loads of fun.
She's a dog, says Craig.
Todd takes off, and then Craig tells the audience to go have a Coke or something because nothing's going to happen in the next 15 minutes. But he spoke too soon. Freddie is there, and he's brought a toboggan and some hot cocoa in a thermos. He intends to woo Nora, and it's kind of starting to work, I think. He convinces her to get on the toboggan, and through a bit of misadventure, sends her hurtling down the mountain alone.
Not on purpose, he gives her a push, but then he loses his balance.
Well, I did call it misadventure.
And Nora obliviously heads down the hill alone,
chattering to Freddie the whole way.
Todd has reached the lodge and notices that Pevney has fallen asleep on his feet at the desk. So Todd quietly places the blonde wig on Pevney's head. Meanwhile, Nora continues her descent down the hill and she flies over a ski jump.
Well, she sees Bobbi zhuzhing by on his skis, and then she realizes she's on the ski jump and starts to panic before crashing.
At the lodge, Pevney is now awake. He's writing down the details of the dream he just had. It's a recurring dream where his mommy wished he was a girl instead of a boy. He has yet to notice the blonde wig on his head. A girl comes up to the counter to buy a couple of stamps, and when she looks up and sees the rug on Pevney's head, she screams.
The really unconvincing scream, too.
Then Pevney runs outside, excited to tell anyone who will listen that his mother's dream had come true. He's a girl now. He runs into Craig, who is still dressed as Nora. Pevney, why you? He asks. Pevney yells out, "It's contagious!" and runs away.
And then we see the polar bear again. He yodels his way out of his shed and delivers a mug of cocoa to Nita and wolf whistles at one of the other girls. Everyone's on picnic benches in the snow, having a little snack.
Again, Todd notices the polar bear, but decides not to mention it.
He's quizzing Nita about life above the Arctic Circle and what they do when it's dark for 8 months of the year. Nita is strongly hinting that Swedes do nothing but have sex for 8 months of the year, and Todd likes the sound of that.
At the next table, Linda and Barbara are grumbling about how Todd has pretended to be vice president of the ski club to get a story on Nita for the school paper. Todd tells Nita he needs to get a picture of her. Nita says she has one in her room and she offers to bring it to dinner, but Todd says that's okay. He hates looking at pictures while he's eating. So she says she can give it to him after dinner, in the lounge by the fire. Todd repeats this plan loud enough for Linda to hear.
He noticed that his act was working and he's really leaning into it.
So that evening in the lounge, all the kids are there. Most are dancing.
They're all around a roaring fire, which is in a large hearth.
When suddenly the doors blow open.
It's the ski patrol, but not one you've ever seen before.
Led by James Brown, they bring in the frozen Pevney.
They also have 3 St. Bernards, and they each have one of the barrels around their neck, and all of them have mixed drinks in them. And the kids are kind of excited about this.
The kids identify Pevney, but the leader of the ski patrol thought it was the abominable snow girl.
Yeah, wig still intact. He doesn't introduce himself, but Barbara recognizes him as James Brown and the other 3 as the Famous Flames, and demand that he do a song. He no sooner agrees than starts breaking into "I Feel Good." All the kids dance or otherwise clap along as the song plays out.
As the song ends, James Brown slides out the door the Famous Flames had left earlier.
They leave their coats behind. He just sort of like shuffles backwards out the door. This has got to be the best musical cameo in any movie I've ever seen.
Later, all the kids are sitting around. Nobody's dancing anymore. Todd and Nita are playing cards. Freddie is lamenting that Nora is lost somewhere out in the snow. And Linda assures Freddie that Nora will be fine.
Barbara's sitting on the couch with Craig and fuming that she knows where Nora is. She was seen going into Craig's room, and she's probably there now. Craig says that he and Todd like European chicks, and Barbara stomps off.
Freddie asks Craig why he's smiling. "You heard, Barbara. I'm having a big thing with myself." "What?" "Never mind," says Craig.
Freddie goes over to Todd to taunt them about coming up to the ski lodge and not ever skiing, not even once.
Todd says he was planning on going out tomorrow, but Freddie reminds him that tomorrow is the big competition. "Okay, the next day," says Todd. "We're going home the next day," says Freddie.
Freddie calls Todd a chicken, and Nita asks, "Is it true? Are you afraid to jump?" Now Todd's caught in a bind.
Nita suggests Todd could enter the competition. She likes winners.
She thinks that he could win, and if he does, she says she'll reward him with a game of spin the bottle back at her place.
It's her favorite American game.
And that's enough for Todd to agree to risk life and limb. Linda's been watching, and she finds this very hurtful.
Linda tells Todd that she hates him, and she hopes he wins.
And then Freddie says, "We who are about to watch you die salute you." And he does a salute. Now that they're alone, Todd asks Craig, what choice did he have? He's got to do this.
Later, we see that Craig is sneaking a container of helium to his room. He nabbed it from a weather balloon that was going to be sent up. Apparently, they send one up every day. In their room, Todd is in a wetsuit, and Craig straps the helium tank onto Todd, saying that he hopes it will work. "Why not?" says Todd. "It works in movies."
And now we're down at the bottom of the ski jump, where everyone's supposed to land, and Pevney's running the show. All the kids are in the audience watching the action. Pevney, through an intercom of some kind, tells Freddie that he's up next.
Pevney fires a gun into the air to signal Freddie to start, and Freddie comes down the hill and jumps 236 feet. In the stands, Linda and Barbara applaud. Nita is there too, sitting with Craig. Gene is up next, and he jumps 234 feet. And now it's Todd Armstrong's turn.
Yep, up at the top, alone, he preps his helium tank, and then he heads down. Just as he makes the jump, he deploys the helium tank. It blows up his coat, and he goes up really, really high, like a balloon.
He wonders if President Johnson will want to talk to him when he comes down.
Nita asks why he looks so fat up there, and Craig says because he likes to have a big breakfast before ski jumps.
Then he yells out for Todd to pull the string, but Todd can't find it.
Craig asks Pevney what to do, and Pevney predicts that, well, once he floats out to the coast, radar will pick him up and some jets can shoot him down. This inspires Craig.
So Craig grabs Pevney's starter pistol to try to shoot Todd down himself. The first shot misses, but the second one is successful and it's hitting its target.
He pops and starts spiraling downward and crashes, burying himself in the ground.
A small crowd of kids runs up to him, including Linda, Barbara, and Craig. I think it's broken, says Todd. Craig looks at his ski. Yes, it's broken. Not that, my leg. Ow! Craig agrees that his leg is broken as well.
I'm surprised they're not both broken, and a lot more besides. How many hundreds of feet do you think he fell? Like he jumped out of a crop duster.
So now we see Linda, Barbara, and Craig waiting outside the infirmary, where Todd is howling in pain from the other side of the door.
And he's afraid that this is going to mess up his date with Nita tonight. In their room, to Craig's surprise, Todd is determined to hobble over to Nita's. She even left him a map to her place.
He's got his leg in a full cast now.
Yeah. He reminds Craig that he is to call Linda to make sure that she knows that he is going over there, and then he limps away. He's supposed to wait 10 minutes, but as soon as Todd's out the door, Craig makes the call. Linda answers, and Craig subtly tells her that Todd took his bottle and left.
He then asks to speak to Barbara, but Barbara doesn't want to talk to Craig. Feeling rejected, Craig walks across the room and notices his Nora wig. He puts it on and goes to the phone. He asks for room 206. Then he raises the pitch of his voice. Hello, Freddie, is that you? I bet I can't do falsettos anymore.
I don't think I could even do that, Jeff. And now we're with Todd and his broken leg as they make the miles-long trek to Nita's in the snow. It's actually blizzarding right now. It's quite the journey. Once he gets there, he spots a polar bear who is uncharacteristically angry.
The polar bear roars, but Todd is too exhausted from his journey to deal with this right now. Get out, he says.
And then he goes inside Nita's cabin, which to me looks like the interior of Jeannie's bottle from the TV show I Dream of Jeannie. Todd's ready to spin the bottle, but Nita's had a change of heart.
She wants him to talk to her like he does the American girls. She says she's been watching, and it looks like fun. First they'll talk, then more talk. Then he'll ask for a kiss on the cheek, and then maybe. But she doesn't know what comes after that. Neither does Todd. That's as far as he's ever gotten.
And apparently he doesn't even get that far, because the next time we see him, he's back in his room. He's packing his case, and I think Craig's as well. Craig, as Nora enters, starry-eyed. Todd demands to know why he's dressed like that.
We're pinned, Craig smiles. Congratulations, says Todd. You and Barbara. Not Barbara, Craig cuts him off. Freddie. But he can't do that. He's a boy, and so are you. We'll work it out, says Craig.
Todd thinks that Craig has lost it and vows to get him out of there tonight. He grabs their suitcases. I guess he did pack both. And they start to leave by going out the door, but Freddie's out there. Todd asks who's there. And then Freddie goes berserk. Todd's in the room with his Nora.
He's so jealous, says Craig. Todd decides they should go out through the window. As they're exiting, Craig says Freddie wants him to get a nose job in the spring, and Todd offers to give him one tonight.
He's gushing about Freddie because no one has ever treated him so well, or her.
They go out the window onto the ledge, and the whole time Craig is talking about how wonderful Freddie is.
It's from a good family.
Then they go through another window back inside, just as Freddie breaks the door down into their room. Finding his Nora gone, Freddie chases after her. Todd and Craig hail a cab, and Freddie waylays Pevney, who's riding by on a scooter, to give chase.
He commands him to follow that cab, and Pevney reluctantly agrees.
There's a small crowd of the kids outside who witnessed this escape, and one of the guys tells the others to make sure everyone's awake, including the driver, because they're going to have to head back. I'm not sure why they're in such a hurry.
No.
And he tells India to gather the skis and poles. They're packing and they're all leaving.
If you expect things to start making sense in this movie right now, well, I don't think we're watching the same movie. It's 894 miles to Los Angeles. In the cab, Craig takes off his wig and tells Todd he was just kidding. He's not really into Freddie, and can they just go back now? Todd's relieved, but seeing Freddie chasing them, tells the cabbie, who's Dick Miller, to keep going.
Craig may be kidding, but Freddie certainly isn't. Now all the kids are on the bus and headed back to Los Angeles. Knowing that Todd and Nora apparently left together, Linda is sorry that she's driven Todd into another woman's arms.
She blames herself and her hard-to-get tactics. Barbara looks at her aghast. She can't believe her ears.
We're back in the cab, and Craig is driving now, while the cabbie is taking a nap in the back. At this point, the fare is over $400.
Uh-oh. That's 1965 money. And now we're back with Freddie and Mr. Pevney. I guess the scooter has finally run out of gas, so they stop at a station. It's early, 6:30 a.m., and the place doesn't open till 7. So Pevney figures that no one's there. But Freddie pounds loudly on the station door, demanding that the proprietor wake up and gas them up.
Freddie walks around the other side of the building to see if he can find anyone, when the attendant comes out in a bathrobe and carrying a crowbar.
I guess he lives there?
Pevney says they need some gas and tells him it only takes about 18 cents worth of regular.
Pevney gets clobbered for Freddie's sins. But when Freddie returns, the scooter is, I guess, gassed up. even though Pevney is kind of passed out on top of it. He picks them both up and then they drive off.
Hurry up, we don't want them to get away, says Freddie. Yes, we do, says Pevney. The next sign we see says it's only 49 miles to Los Angeles. Back on the bus, everyone is asleep except for Barbara and Linda.
Linda wonders why the guys ran off. She and Barbara realize that they really do love those nuts. Linda wonders what Barbara did wrong with Craig. Guilt by association, reckons Barbara. Barbara gives Linda an apple and says that she'll feel better if she eats some fruit.
Back in the cab, the cabbie is driving again. He points out the Pacific Ocean. He seems really excited to see it. He's probably never seen it before, being from Idaho. Half asleep, Craig asks Todd if there's anyone at the beach house. Also half asleep, Todd replies, no. Dad took Mom away for the weekend. They'll have the whole weekend to soak up the sun in privacy. Craig says if he sees snow again before he's 60, it'll be too soon. As they pull up to the beach house, they tell the cabbie to wait in the driveway. Craig asks Todd what he should do with his Nora getup. Todd tells him not to waste a match, just leave him out on the beach. When the tide comes in, whoosh. Then Todd tells Craig to take any bedroom upstairs.
But Craig asks for a blanket. He'd rather sleep on the beach. And then Dick Miller, the cabbie, asks if he can have a blanket too. He's been driving a long time and he really needs to sleep. Todd agrees to go get him one and then remembers that somehow he's going to have to pay that $560 cab fare. Yeah, growls Dick Miller.
Meanwhile, the bus pulls over to the beach house. The kids all run out and are excited to see the Hondells performing on the beach.
Wow, what luck. And a beach party with chicks in bikinis and guys in shorts commences immediately.
The Hondells finish performing Ski Party and then go into the gasser.
Barbara and Linda split up and go find their fellas. But we forgot to mention that Paul Gleason is shimmying in the background as the Hondells play the gasser. Anyway, we're almost done.
Linda goes into the beach house and finds Todd. Todd asks what she's doing there. She says she followed him all the way from Idaho. Then Todd confesses everything for some dumb reason.
Well, Linda wants to know if Nora's gone, and Todd says that she never existed. Linda's about to take all the blame when Todd reveals that he was Jane and Nora was Craig.
And instead of being pissed, Linda's impressed that he went through all that trouble.
He even shows off his fake accent. She does not smack him, strangely. And she also doesn't curse herself for being so unobservant to not notice that her boyfriend was wearing a wig. Todd explains the whole setup, and Linda is really flattered that he wanted her that bad and would go to all that trouble for her. Todd confesses that, I'm a wipeout for redheads. And, well, let's not tell Annette about that.
Outside, Freddie pulls up on that scooter. Pevney's running behind him because he didn't get to ride all the way. Freddie's desperately asking everyone where Nora is. He goes to Craig, who points out the clothes laying on the beach, and says that when Nora heard that Freddie was coming, she just started swimming. He figured she's somewhere between here and Japan. Freddie goes out into the water, chasing after her, yelling, "Nora!"
He vows to find her. Craig breaks the fourth wall to tell us not to worry about Freddie. They'll tell him tomorrow if he doesn't drown. And now we're with Pevney, who I guess we should point out he's been wearing one of those raccoon coats this entire time, and he's still wearing it. He's sitting on the beach dictating a letter to his therapist.
He says he's feeling better, but looking at the surfboards, he says he's noticed that the skis have gotten much fatter.
And then the credits mercifully roll, and we are told to remember the moral of the story. And I guess it's Frankie Avalon, because that's the next thing that comes up on screen.
We're also told to remember not to forget to turn off our TVs when it's time to come back and watch Cruise Party.
And that never happens. Maybe that was supposed to be a TV show, if we're not turning off our TVs. But either way, it doesn't exist. And then we see a little more of that night skiing footage, and that's the end. Welcome back to the American International Podcast, where we're talking about Ski Party from 1965.
Ski Party is the sixth film in the Beach Party series. Filming for Ski Party was set to begin shortly after Beach Blanket Bingo wrapped.
On November 2nd, 1964, Daily Variety reported that Ski Party was set to begin filming in Hollywood in February of 1965 for AIP. It would star John Ashley, Deborah Walley, and Susan Hart, but Ashley and Hart did not remain with the project. Variety listed Ski Party as one of AIP's golden dozen releases for 1965, with an expected theatrical release in September of 1965. However, by late February 1965, Variety revised that to a June 65 release.
In two separate articles published in October of 1964, Daily Variety reported that singer Bobbi Vinton had partnered with producer Alan Klein to form an independent film production company called Bobbi Vinton Productions, and had hired Ed Lasko to write a screenplay entitled Ski Party, in which Vinton would star. Production was expected to occur in Switzerland in February 1965, and a $1 million budget was announced. Although the title and the production starting date were the same, Bitten's film does not appear to have any relation to the AIP feature, and a skiing picture starring the singer was never produced.
Daily Variety announced in December of 1964 that Frankie Avalon had been cast in the lead role, and filming was scheduled to begin in March on location in Sun Valley, Idaho. The shoot was planned to be entirely on location and centered around the Harriman Cup races held annually at the Idaho resort.
Alan Rafkin was announced as the director that February, marking the television director's feature film debut. Rehearsals were scheduled to begin in late February 1965.
In March of 65, Earl Wilson's column said that Robert Q. Lewis, quote, gets his break in an AIP picture ski party. He gets to break his leg. A blurb by a syndicated columnist reported that Lewis had to commute between Idaho and New York, where Lewis was serving as a substitute host for To Tell the Truth. In April of 1965, Wilson reported that Patty Chandler, who played Janet, broke a toe doing the Watusi for the ski party film.
Luella Parsons' column, released in April of 1965, reported, Dwayne Hickman knows where his next 14 movies are coming from. James H. Nicholson and Samuel Arkoff have just about secured dibs on Dwayne by signing him for 2 films a year for the next 7 years. Says boss Arkoff, Dwayne is our star of the future, and we're putting our money where our judgment is. We decided on the long-termer, seeing his rushes and ski party. We think is best so far.
Ernest Scott interviewed Frankie Avalon for his column published in April of 65 and wrote, Mr. Avalon, age 24, has put his sandy foot down and refused to play a male beach beauty again. I was getting typed, Avalon said with admirable restraint. People are beginning to think of me as the beach party kid.
According to Hollywood Surf and Beach Movies Part 1 by Thomas Lasani, AIP wanted contract player John Ashley to play Freddie, and even ran ads in the trade saying Ashley would appear in Ski Party. But producer Gene Corman thought Ashley wasn't tall enough and looked too similar to Frankie Avalon. Corman had to fight AIP until they finally relented and allowed Kincaid to appear.
I guess that's why John Ashley was mentioned in that Golden Dozen report. AIP signed Aron Kincaid to a 7-year contract and planned to cast him in a proposed musical remake of The Adventures of Robin Hood, with Frankie and Annette as Robin and Marian. Can you imagine? That project was shelved, and Kincaid won a role in The Ghost in the Invisible Bikini instead.
Kincaid lied to producers when they asked if he could ski. He then called his cousin, a ski instructor at Big Bear Lake, and asked for ski lessons, and that he had 2 days to do it. Kincaid's cousin told him, "You're not going to be able to walk in 2 days."
Dwayne Hickman said in an interview that he had no interest in appearing in Ski Party until he read the script. He wrote in his autobiography, Forever Dobie, in Ski Party, I was set to play Craig Gamble, and the role of my buddy Todd Armstrong would be played by Frankie Avalon. When Frankie and I met at the wardrobe fitting, we hit it off immediately. We talked about the script and decided that we should play the characters like Hope and Crosby. Frankie would be the Crosby-type character, smart, in charge, and slick, while I would play the Hope role and be the bumbler. We had a lot of funny physical business, which helped a not very imaginative script.
Hickman also wrote that he and Avalon rode 3 different ski lifts to the top of the mountain for a shoot, only to find that the camera was frozen and the shoot would be delayed. Neither Avalon nor Hickman could ski, so they had to take the lifts back down the mountain. I have never been colder in my whole life, he wrote.
In her autobiography, Yvonne Craig wrote about how she was excited to appear in Ski Party. I told my agent that if Dwayne was in it and Bob had written it, I didn't even need to read it. I was sure it was wonderful. Only too late did I realize that Bob was in the throes of writer's block and that Ski Party was the derivative result.
According to Harrison Carroll's column, published in April, Deborah Walley had 24 hours notice before her on-screen singing debut in Ski Party, where she sang We'll Never Change Them. The song was originally written as I'll Never Change Him and sung by Annette Funicello in a scene cut from Beach Blanket Bingo. Lesley Gore was originally supposed to sing it in Ski Party, but she backed out.
Though a classically trained ballerina, Yvonne Craig never got the hang of social dancing, and after seeing her try to do the twist during the James Brown number, director Rafkin suggested that Craig take a seat by the hearth and try clapping to the beat. But when that proved too difficult for her, he instructed her to just sit there and sway.
This is the only AIP Beach Party film not scored by Les Baxter. Edwin Norton is credited as the film's music editor, and Gary Usher is credited with the film's score.
Abe Greenberg wrote in an April 65 column for the LA Citizen News that Ski Party director Alan Rafkin was enjoying switching from directing to television to motion pictures. Man, it's beautiful, he said. Feature films give you so much more time to get what you want on the screen. We shoot about 4 pages of script a day for a movie, as opposed to cracking about 12 pages a day for television plays. While there's greater spontaneity in television, there's greater excitement in making movies.
Despite every precaution taken by AIP, there were some injuries during the filming of Ski Party. Dwayne Hickman hurt his back and Deborah Walley suffered strained ligaments, and Hickman's stand-in Corky Fowler broke his leg. Cameraman John Stevens fractured 2 ribs when the snow rig he was riding hit a rock.
Filming in Sun Valley was completed by mid-March, followed by post-production, which happened at Producers Studios, Inc. in Hollywood, California.
Ski Party opened in Los Angeles on August 11, 1965. In October of 1965, Ski Party was playing in New York City on a double bill with another AIP release also starring Frankie Avalon, Sergeant Deadhead.
Wow, what a pairing. Dell Comics published a 12-cent comic book version of Ski Party in conjunction with the movie's release.
Box Office recommended theater owners play up the musical angle, arranging for music stores to display Avalon's many record albums, as well as those of Lesley Gore.
Taglines for Ski Party include, "Hear Frankie Avalon, Lesley Gore, and James Brown singing and swinging their newest hit.
The coolest way to keep warm at 20 degrees below.
It's where the he's meet the she's on skis, and there's only one way to get warm.
When the ski nicks meet the ski chicks, it's called Snow a Go-Go."
I think their tagline writer needs to calm down. Samuel Arkoff stated in a New York Times interview that Ski Party was a commercial disappointment. A follow-up film announced in the credits, Cruise Party, was never made. Arkoff said, quote, "The Bikini Beach style has had it. We've had some real bombs lately." But then Arkoff cited favorable publicity touting the success of the beach films hurt them because actors and writers have, quote, "read so much about how much money American International was making that they've started asking for higher salaries." James H. Nicholson said, "The success of our whole operation depends on our ability to bring in pictures on modest budgets. That's become almost impossible now."
Both Columbia Pictures and Universal Studios produced their versions of Snowbound Beach Party films. Columbia's Winter a Go-Go was released 4 months later in October 1965, and Universal's Wild Wild Winter was released in January 1966.
So the trend can't be that unprofitable. Box Office wrote in their review, "This should do smash business wherever young folk predominate." As directed by Alan Rafkin from a typically daffy screenplay by Robert Kaufman, the picture moves fast, gets many howls during a some like it hot situation, and Avalon and Hickman masquerade as girls. Avalon and Hickman are funny and believable throughout. The Panavision Technicolor photography is an asset.
The Los Angeles Times wrote the dialogue seems awfully childish even for teenagers, but like the musical acts.
The Boston Globe reviewer wrote, "As usual, the picture is designed for immature escapists. This being true, how to account for the many fat and informally clad adults in the audience? There must be a reason beyond the comprehension of this reviewer."
Sam Hoffman of the Springfield, Massachusetts Daily News called Ski Party no world beater, but it is better than the usual run-of-the-mill party films, which should make every youngster around quite happy. Hoffman continued, "The acting is uniformly acceptable. Neither Frankie, Dwayne, Deborah, or Yvonne need worry about an Oscar nomination. Some fun is provided by Robert Q. Lewis as the befuddled desk clerk at the ski resort."
Ken Bernard in the Detroit Free Press did not spare the criticism in his review. Aimed frankly at the teen trade, this fluff casserole runs much too long for the little it has to offer. What it really amounts to is a Bush League version of Some Like It Hot. Young audiences may be content to listen to the musical efforts of Lesley Gore and James Brown while watching the writhing that accompanies the music at poolside. Skiing will probably continue as a sport despite this view of it.
Variety called it an entertaining teenage comedy romance in snow country settings, with excellent direction of good satirical script and fine performances by young thesps. Gene Corman production values are standout, and 7 tunes enliven pace.
The New York Times review did not have much more to say than the scenery of the Sawtooth National Forest is gorgeous, and a busload of girls who agitate their bikinis and ski pants at the camera are willowy. But in a 2014 review of the James Brown biopic Get On Up, Nelson George recalled the singer's appearance in the film. He wrote, "In the 1965 Frankie Avalon vehicle Ski Party, James Brown and his backing vocal group, the famous Flames, enter a ski lodge after rescuing a frozen reveler. Resplendent in white and red sweater, tight black slacks, black pointy shoes, and a regal pompadour, Brown performs I Got You, I Feel Good, giving the lily-white crowd of clapping skiers a taste of the showmanship that had made him a star on the so-called Chitlin circuit among blacks. Even in a movie as disposable as Ski Party, Brown turned a corny scene into genuine entertainment."
Ski Party was released to DVD by MGM Home Video on April 15, 2003, paired with Muscle Beach Party as part of the Midnight Movies collection, with Ski Party on side 2 of the disc, and released again on July 10, 2007 as part of the box set The Frankie and Annette collection, with Ski Party on the 4th disc.
All right, Jeff, we've had a lot to say about Ski Party, but we really haven't given a lot of our own opinions. So why don't you start? And what's the first thing that comes to mind when you want to give your evaluation of Ski Party?
Well, I know that you haven't seen many of the Beach Party movies. I've seen most of them, and they tend to get more and more surreal as they go along. Really, the only surreal thing in this, I think, is the polar bear.
Yeah. And it's my favorite part. But I really go for things that are surreal and absurd in movies.
But the way this movie plays differently, and I think that's because we have a different director. We had Alan Rafkin directing this one, and up to this time, it's always been a William Asher direction.
It did feel different from the ones that I have seen, Beach Party and Muscle Beach Party. And to me, it was kind of a positive change.
It definitely plays at a faster pace.
And I thought, while this movie does have some very corny elements, I thought that they also introduced a little something more than the typical cornball humor that we get from a Beach Party movie, especially Muscle Beach Party, which I thought was one of the most egregious movies I've ever seen.
Oh, you haven't seen anything yet.
Corny.
Yeah, but there's also a lot of meaningless dialogue here.
Yeah, I tried not to write it down when we were taking notes. And I think that's because it was corny and I'm not really interested in that.
Another corny thing is Operation Screwball. I don't understand why that was so important for Todd Armstrong to want to mess this guy up. I mean, keep your eye on the prize. Why are you here?
Yeah, the only thing that would make sense is if they were trying to get rid of supervision. They didn't want to be supervised as they tried to zero in on their women, but their whole plan made it unnecessary. Whether they were supervised or not, they were playing women, so they could go anywhere. So yeah, it just seemed like they were being cruel for no good reason.
Well, I think the reason was just to give Robert Q. Lewis something to do.
Yeah, but I think that with all the other antics that were going on, maybe he could have been the only one that notices that Todd and Craig are Jane and Nora, and nobody believes him because for some reason they pass so well as other people. That could have been funny. But it just seems like, looking at it from 2025, when mental health is a serious issue and them playing with a guy who's unstable in some way just seems really mean. It's not really in the spirit of fun that you would expect in a movie like this. But obviously, different time, and they were playing it for laughs. It just seemed kind of cruel.
And if he's in this position where he's going to have a breakdown that easily, he probably shouldn't be in charge of a whole ski lodge.
Yeah, there's no other staff at all. We don't see anybody. It's just him and all these kids. So no wonder he's starting to crack a little. Who wouldn't? But yeah, there's a lot of other themes in this movie that they could be exploring more fully. And there's kind of a gender identity, sexuality thing going on here, where I think in a more modern movie, I think we'd see Craig discovering that maybe he's not straight, at least not 100%.
No, which would also account for his animosity toward Freddie in the beginning of the movie. He just wants to clobber him.
Right. So he's in denial of something that maybe he's not even really aware of yet. But like you said, Freddie's the only one who's treated him well. And that's kind of a revelation for him, what it's like to be pursued and what it's like to be wanted. And he's never had that. And he's realizing that even though it's coming from a man, it's still welcome. And what does that mean? But then we have to sort of negate all that because Todd doesn't approve.
Yeah, we mentioned the Dell Comics adaptation and really do brush over all that stuff.
So obviously it touched a nerve. They play it for laughs here, but it feels like there's something more going on. And maybe there's something more going on with Freddie too, because he's got all these beautiful women just clawing at him. And nobody likes to be pawed all the time, but he's not into them. The first person he's into is a man in drag and one who's aloof with him. So I think that that's the real story here. In a modern remake, that's what we'd be exploring. It wouldn't be a goof. It'd be for real.
This is also a kind of a change for an AIP film in that they brought in Gene Corman as producer, and he had some of his own ideas. This is Roger Corman's brother, of course.
Yeah. He'd already done a couple of beach movies by now, which I haven't seen, so I can't really say how they might be different from the AIP versions.
And he had brought in some of his own casting ideas. It kind of infiltrated the AIP regulars. John Ashley was out, Aron Kincaid was in, and he brought Dick Miller in.
Oh, yeah. And I think swapping John Ashley for Aron Kincaid was probably the best thing he could have done for this movie. John Ashley would have been a disaster in this role. They needed someone who was different than our two schlubby lead characters. And John Ashley could really blend in with them. He does in the other beach movies. He's one of the gang.
Yeah, they're all brunettes.
And Aron Kincaid is a tall, Nordic-looking blonde. I kind of expected him to have an accent when the movie first started to, add to his allure with all the women. But no, he's just a all-American guy.
With a very nasal voice.
Yeah, he's no prize in the voice department, but then neither is John Ashley. But yeah, that's kind of the parts of the movie that I liked, is the gender swapping, the gender roles, the way that romance is treated, how women view it, how men view it, how it's different. And I thought, had that been explored a little more thoroughly, it could still be funny. But instead, they sort of leaned into the cornball.
And I mentioned this during the synopsis, but Dwayne Hickman and Frank Avalon don't go out of their way to really look like women. They're just wearing wigs.
Yeah.
And the blonde wig that Frankie Avalon wears, he allegedly puts on Pevney, but that's got to be a different wig because that's more like a Dutch boy look.
Yeah, they're both short wigs. So they're not rocking long ponytails or flowing locks. They sort of look like moms. Like they're in their 40s. They're tired of trying to look good for their husbands and they've just given up. And that's the result.
That's what they look like, but that's not what they're supposed to be posing as.
No, they're supposed to look like the other girls. And all the other girls are willowy and wearing tight clothes and they have long hair. Well, actually, Linda and Barbara don't have long hair. But basically, they look very stereotypically female. And Todd and Craig look like boys wearing their mother's clothing and wigs. And they dabbled a little bit in their makeup kit. They should have had Linda and Barbara teach them how to do their makeup and stuff.
And their falsetto voices are only slightly more convincing than mine is.
Hello. It's too bad this is pre-Monty Python because they could have learned a lot from Michael Palin and Eric Idle, who were very good at playing British women.
How do you feel about after all this, they just end up back on the beach?
It kind of feels inevitable, even though I thought it was an extremely dumb development. But they're trying to reinforce that, yeah, this is the beach party gang, and we're going to at least end up with one beach scene.
It feels strange because they don't start out on the beach. They're in college.
Right.
They're on a campus. So it's kind of weird that that's where they wind up.
No, but I guess that's where the Hondells were, and what choice did they have? I mean, you want to get a look at the Pacific Ocean, right? And they had to dispose of Nora and Freddie, I guess. Last seen somewhere around Guam. I don't know. There's so many dumb developments in this movie that I'm not a screenwriter, but I would object to if I was in some sort of script conference. You know, can't we do this differently? Can't we make it make sense a little bit more? Can't we make it a little more fun for the audience? But I don't know. Are they really aiming this at 15-year-olds? Was that really the audience that they were going for? Because this feels like a middle-aged person movie to me.
I don't think a middle-aged person would be caught dead in a beach party movie.
No, but it's so tame. And that's part of, you know, we're in 1965. Maybe the sexual revolution hasn't quite kicked in yet, but these girls are fighting over getting kissed on the cheek. And they're on dates with boys. And I'm not saying that they need to put out or anything, but they're so standoffish. Craig kisses Barbara and she says, now you have to marry me. I mean, I'm pretty sure that people kissed in the 50s even, if not earlier. And now we're in the mid 60s and a peck on the cheek is third base. It just seems a little weird that they're so sexually tame here, so puritanical. It just feels out of time and place.
Well, there was the Boston Globe review that said that there were adults in the audience, which befuddled the reviewer.
They're fat too, and not dressed up at all. So I don't know what the reviewer was expecting. Teenagers in formal clothing, I guess. Yeah, it just seems that the audience for this movie is someone who doesn't exist. Young people who are very puritanical. I just don't know who would be interested in this. And it did flop, so there you go.
I think the movie starts out a lot more promising than it ends up. We get the characters where they're going. They're on the bus. Lesley Gore is there. And then she vanishes, and it's kind of downhill from there. It picks up a little when James Brown shows up, but yeah, that's it.
And the musical numbers, I think, kind of are the highlight of this movie. And I think they're good. I think they're better than definitely Muscle Beach Party. I do miss Dick Dale and the Deltones, but I thought the caliber of the songs was better here. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's just the James Brown and Lesley Gore of it all.
It's too bad Lesley Gore didn't sing that other song.
Yeah, but then she would have to be one of the girls, and she would have to have a reason to be there.
I would have been okay with her being there.
But then she would have to be like poolside, and she'd have to be at the ski lesson. Like, why would she be with all the other girls if she's not their friend? But then again, why would she just be on the bus? And then where does she go after that? The bus doesn't go back. Where does she go? She rode all the way from Los Angeles to Idaho, and then she vanishes. So that doesn't make sense.
She could just come out when needed. When we did Sergeant Deadhead, Bobbi Shaw's in that, and she sings a song out of nowhere. She played Nita Elksberg in Ski Party, but she appears in Sergeant Deadhead out of nowhere, sings a song, and we never see her again. A lot of the background characters who have been around in Beach Party movies for a while do get names and lines here where they normally wouldn't. So that was kind of good to see.
Yeah, but it is weird. We could not figure out who the guy on the ski lift who commented on Craig and Todd's unusual closeness. And then I think that was the same guy who at the end tells everyone to, get into gear. We're getting out of here. We don't know his name. Got a very distinctive face, but I don't know who it is.
We narrowed it down to probably Gene or John or Arthur.
But definitely not Mickey. Lurie Holmes plays Lurie. That's James Nicholson's daughter.
Mickey Jameson is another one who was brought over by Gene Corman. Plays Mickey.
One of the Mickeys. Girl Mickey.
And Mickey Dora also plays Mickey.
Boy Mickey.
He was the professional surfer in the group.
Was anybody surfing?
No, but he's been in the Beach Party movies prior.
Right. But why was he here? Did he also ski? Yeah, a lot of unanswered questions with the casting. Annette Funicello had sort of an odd cameo playing against her regular character, but I think that was just for shock value. I don't know. She really needed to be here.
No, I agree. It was for shock value. The same thing with her cameo in Dr. Golf and the Bikini Machine. She appears briefly in the stocks.
in the dungeon. And that's just them being silly. And we're not supposed to take this movie seriously. I realize that. But I think that silly can just go too far sometimes. They're trying to tell a story here, and they let this other stuff take you out of the movie too much.
And yet the yodeling polar bear was your favorite character.
Because it only happens 4 or 5 times. It's very brief, and it's really funny. And they don't explain it. They don't take a lot of time to point it out. It's just something that happens and then goes away.
Except for the part where the polar bear brings coffee to Nita, it's almost as if Todd Armstrong is the only one who ever sees it.
And we see it. So it's our shared delusion. And there's no reason for that to be there. It's just something that I personally find delightful. Had it not been there, I wouldn't have missed it.
The way you see the Beach Party movie with the talking pelican.
Oh, well, can't wait. Sure, that's corny. Did you have a favorite song amongst the numbers that weren't performed by guest stars?
That weren't performed by guest stars? Is there only the 2 of them?
Yeah, I think so. You can say the Hondells.
I think the theme song Ski Party is probably the best. The Gasser didn't really stand out to me.
I think I like the We'll Never Change Them song. It's really bouncy and upbeat and kind of a good message that they just need to accept their men as they are or break up with them.
I did think that was better than Frankie's song.
Yeah, but it's kind of a bop. The painting the town when they're in the sleigh.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
Yeah, that was cute. It was funny that they're painting the town and they're on an afternoon sleigh ride. And you think, well, they're going to town and they're going to whoop it up there. But no, they're having a charming little sleigh ride through the snow. And it's a cute scene. They look cute. It's very picturesque.
But then it gets into that meaningless dialogue between Craig and Barbara, where they're trying to outdo each other in the cute department.
Or the funny department. And I think Barbara wins. Craig is not that funny. It's really hard to see the appeal of either of the lead characters. They're neurotic, they're handsy, they're entitled, they're not that interesting.
They like to break the fourth wall.
Yeah.
But Dwayne Hickman has always done that. It's weird to think of him not breaking the fourth wall. It's a Dobie thing.
Right. And it's an AIP thing, these beach party movies. And it's a Frankie Avalon thing too, because we've seen him do that before. And it irritates me every single time.
Even in The Million Eyes of Sumeru.
Yeah. It's supposed to be a spy thriller, I guess. And yeah, he does a little take to the audience. Yeah, it annoys me. And no less so here. That's just another corny thing that I could do without. But yeah, Todd and Craig need to work on themselves. They demand that the girls like them, but they're not likable. You want to be liked, be likable. It's pretty easy. Instead, they just whine about how they can't get none. But in the 60s, I guess you get issued your girlfriend in college and then you get married. And well, if that doesn't happen, it's not your fault. It's the system.
I know it's a movie, but the plan to go out and drag works a lot better for them than it should. Even getting the outfits together, because that's something he planned on before they got there.
They raided the lost and found. They were lucky to find 2 wigs. Most places wouldn't even have 1.
Exactly.
I can't believe a woman would leave those behind. Those are expensive. You don't just leave them in the nightstand.
Well, in her defense, they really weren't attractive wigs.
No, but she called back wanting them, so they meant something to her. Pevney had to assure her that they weren't going to be dyed and sold on the black market or something.
That's right.
All right, I think we've picked apart this movie as much as we can pick. Let's give it a rating. Using our AIP scale, where A is awesome, I is intermediate, and P is pathetic. You first.
Well, when I was researching this film, what I discovered was that behind the scenes of this movie are so much more fun than the movie itself. We only touched on this, but there's a situation with Yvonne Craig where she wasn't allowed to participate in the dance numbers because apparently she has no sense of rhythm whatsoever.
And she's a ballerina.
But when it comes to rock and roll, I guess she can't dance.
Wasn't she in an Elvis movie?
She was in 2 Elvis movies.
Oh, wow.
But apparently they had her dancing during the James Brown sequence and had to have her go off screen because she looked too awkward. So they tried having her clap and she couldn't keep the beat.
I wish we could see some of the outtakes.
And then there's another story that's not really surprising, but Aron Kincaid spoke of how he really wasn't accepted into the clique. And then apparently there were 3 different cliques on the set of this. The leads were in one, the regular beach party kids were in the other, and then there were the outsiders who were in a 3rd clique and weren't even allowed to be part of that. So they were all social, but they weren't hanging out together. And they weren't accepted as part of the other groups.
And Kincaid didn't belong in any of those groups. He was the true outsider.
But as for Ski Party, despite all the interesting background, the movie just is not great. It's amusing. I too like the polar bear. But this one has just kind of a weird feel to it. And a lot of that is because of the way it's edited. Dialogue will continue into the next scene as kind of a transition.
Yeah.
And while that's not unusual in film, it is unusual in the Beach Party series. So it does feel weird. And then there's the bits like Operation Screwball. Again, what's the point? And the fact that Linda's agreeable to taking Todd back after finding out that he did all this stuff that any sane woman would be like goodbye and never speak to him again.
Yeah. Any sane woman would have figured it out on day 1.
But this is a fantasy world and we're all watching it. I'm going to give it an I. It's an okay watch. The songs are good. Musical guests are great.
Yeah, if nothing else, watch the James Brown scene.
And it's worth a watch at least once. Intermediate I for me. What do you think?
I'm going to agree because there are parts of it that I did like, but I'm kind of extrapolating them into a different, better movie. The way that Craig started having feelings for Freddie, I think that in a modern movie, we could really explore that. We could have fun with it. We could make it serious. Here, they weren't brave enough to go with that. They had to make it all a goof. And so that takes away from it. I like the polar bear. I like the music. I liked some of the interplay between Barbara and Linda. But yeah, they could do better. These guys aren't all that. And they're totally deciding and talking themselves into settling on the way back to Los Angeles. And it was jaw-dropping that Deborah Walley didn't at least smack Frankie Avalon for what he did to her. It's so stupid and so pointless.
She's touched that he went through all the trouble.
Yeah, but I would be questioning my own sanity and powers of discernment at that point. I'd be writing Dr. Pevney's
As you
doctor.
should.
Yeah. What is wrong with me? I stood this close to my own date, and he was just wearing a wig and some falsies, and I thought he was a completely different person. And, you know, they actually break character a few times in front of the girls. And, of course, it's, you know, stage whisper, I guess, and they're not supposed to overhear, but they're in the same room. Sometimes they're standing right next to each other, and they use their real voices.
They're even talking to us.
Well, yeah, I can see how they're not supposed to see that. But anyway, it's just the dumbness of this movie and the cheesiness of this movie weigh it down to the point where I just can't like it as much as I want to. And I don't hate it. It is better than Muscle Beach Party. Thinking back on that, yeah, I would never want to see that again. This one, I could probably suffer through it one more time. I'm going to give it an I as well. See it for the good parts. Maybe you could just skim through the rest of it.
It's kind of strange that the whole Craig and Freddie relationship is just played for laughs and then kind of blown off.
Yeah, he pinned her. She took his pin. They're going steady. And then at the end, they tell Freddie that she swam into the ocean to get away from him. That doesn't make sense. And here I am demanding that a beach party movie makes sense. I know, but I mean, I had to watch it. I would like a little reward for my effort.
And because Todd and Nora got into that cab together, everybody just assumes they're running off together, which it appears that's what they are doing.
So what? Why does everybody have to then leave their vacation a day early?
Well, Freddie has to because he has to stop Nora from making a horrible mistake. Everybody else, I'm not sure.
And why didn't he just steal Pevney's scooter instead of dragging him along with? Who's running the ski lodge? There's nobody there. Maybe that's why the kids had to leave, because there's no one to serve them dinner anymore. Hope they locked the door on their way out.
So to find out more about Ski Party and the other movies that we've covered on the American International Podcast, visit our website, aippod.com. There you can find posters, trailers, lobby cards, as well as a way to message us so you can tell us how you feel about how we're doing with this podcast, or you can ask questions or tell us if we're wrong about anything that we've said. If the movies are streaming anywhere, you can find out where to stream them on our website, and you can also check on our merch. We'll never ask for money on this podcast, but if you do decide to buy some of our merch, it does help to keep the podcast going.
Pretty cool stuff. All right, I think we've reached the bottom of the hill, and it's time to go for the American International Podcast. I'm Cheryl Lightfoot.
And I'm Jeff Markin.
And we'll meet you at the drive-in.
Follow the American International Podcast on Instagram and Letterboxd at AIP_pod and on Facebook at facebook.com/American International Podcast.
The American International Podcast is produced and edited by Jeff Markin.
A man whose mind is distorted by hatred.
And Cheryl Lightfoot.
A girl hungry for too many things.
The American International Podcast is part of the Pop Culture Entertainment Network.